Hey, it's Rob. What you're about to listen to is my weekly segment on the Jay Thomas Show, which airs on WDAY AM970 in Fargo. Jay and I do these segments every week. I put them on the podcast because I think they're fun. I think we discuss a lot of funny things, a lot of fun things, a lot of important things, interesting things. This segment, though, you may realize, as you listen to it, I didn't quite hit record at the beginning of the episode, so I missed the first few seconds of the show. So if it sounds like we're coming in, you're just about a minute or so late. We didn't talk about anything important. You're not missing much, but just to avoid confusion, I thought I'd put a little note here at the beginning. Listen and enjoy.
The metro area. I'd like to see White Castle come here. Hey, how's the weather out there in mine out there, Rob Port?
It's cold.
Everybody's cold. Hey, did you guys get rain yesterday?
Yeah, we did. It's been weird, man. It was like 40 degrees for a little while yesterday.
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
I heard
we got
the
rain.
Temperature bumped up to 40, then it dropped right back down again.
Yeah, it's been super weird. It's been. I'm waiting for the locusts and the frogs to descend.
Oh, they're on their way, pal. They're on their way. Hey, listen, legislative session underway here, of course, well underway here in North Dakota. Same thing in Minnesota. Wait, it seems not just North Dakota, Rob Port, but also Minnesota. A lot of the bills that have to do with either driving or something to do with transportation. You have the speeding laws in North Dakota. You have the sports cars. You have the speeding limits, or did I just say speeding limits? Minnesota, they're looking at distracted driving, texting and driving, like gas tax here, gas tax in Minnesota. And I know I'm missing something. So a lot of stuff to do with transportation this time around.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a theme. If sometimes we just go through go through a time where that's just on a lot of people's minds, and sometimes these things tend to be cyclical. Hinging on, for instance, sometimes it'll seem like we're doing a lot of appropriating for roads. Well, that's because roads have a lifespan, and
sure.
Every so often you got to go back in and you got to reappropriate money. So sometimes they can be cyclical. Sometimes it could be one particular lawmaker got on a kick about a particular topic area. Sometimes it could be that the legislature did a study or one of the state agencies did a study, and the data we collected from that study has indicated that we need to do more in terms of appropriating more money or changing policy or something like that. So there's a lot of things that could affect it. You got to remember a lot of these bills, because I hear a lot of people moaning about, this bill's so dumb. Why are we spending time on this?
Yeah.
A lot of you got to remember, a lot of these bills are constituent bills, and our lawmakers are very, very open to constituents bringing bills to them. And as a matter of fact, sometimes you'll even hear a lawmaker stand up and say, on the floor, listen, this was a constituent bill. I'm not going to vote for it. However, I had a constituent who said it was very important, and they felt like they wanted to have it an airing, and so I gave them a shot. I don't think that's such a bad thing. We have a very open process. I know people complain about that. I'm not saying that all of the dumb bills are like that. Believe me, the lawmakers are more than capable of coming up with some dumb ideas of their own. But generally, that's a lot of times when you're seeing some of these bills and you're rolling your eye. Well, that's what happened. And if you want an open process, sometimes you get the wheat with the chaff.
All right, let's go through some of these here on the North Dakota side. It looks like the speeding fines, or not speeding fines, but the speed increase. I think that thing went through the House pretty easily, did it not?
Well, it passed the House committee. I don't know that it hasn't been voted on by the full House yet.
Okay, so it went through the committee.
So it went through committee. It should go to a full House, and we'll see what's going to happen with it. We do have the death by fiscal note. I think we've talked about that before. I wrote a post about it today as well. Have you been following that as all? I mean, we were talking about the death by fiscal note. I had Jake Blum on my podcast. We were talking about it, and the Department of Transportation came in, and they said that the fiscal note is almost $5 million for raising the speed limit.
Yeah, and for road repairs and the signage.
Well, they're saying that they have to like dig up and extend all of our exit ramps and everything, which is a little silly. But did you know?
Wait a minute. I didn't hear that part. So
yes.
So if we raise hold on, if we go from 75 to 80 miles an hour on the interstates, the Department of Transportation is claiming that we would have to extend our exit ramps.
Right, and like the on ramps of the exit. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make any sense because people are already traveling at that speed.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay.
It's silly. Okay. It's called death by fiscal note. It's basically, you can tell when a state agency doesn't want to build a pass because they'll just pile on some ridiculous fiscal note. That's one example. You remember back during last year when we were debating Measure 3? and the Department of Health came out and they put a fiscal note on Measure 3, and it included a $3.8 million marketing campaign.
Yeah,
so
campaign.
When I wrote a column about that in the 2016 cycle, so now we go back another cycle, we're talking about medical marijuana. And you know what the Department of Health did there? They put an $8.7 million fiscal note on medical marijuana through the fiscal year, the fiscal year that the most recently ended fiscal year, ended June 30th, 2018. Guess how much they actually spent?
I'm going to guess million and a half.
$363,000.
$363,000 when they were tagging it at $8 million.
Almost $9 million. Yeah,
I want a death by fiscal note. That sure seems to happen on a lot of these.
It does. It's a state agency indicating that they just don't like a bill. Law enforcement will do it a lot if they don't like a bill. They'll just exaggerate all the impacts that there's going to be. It happens all the time.
All right, where are we at with blue laws?
All right, so blue laws passed in the state house and actually passed by a wide margin. So there's not going to be a lot new going on with blue laws until after crossover. That bill will go over to the Senate side. Yep. Now, remember, that's where it died last time, is it died in the Senate. Passed in the House, died in the Senate. Now, I feel like we got more momentum going because last session, when it passed in the House, it passed by a narrow margin. Mm-hmm. And it actually, in fact, it lost the first time it came up to the floor in the House. It got called back on reconsideration. Then it passed. Then it went to the Senate. Now, this time around, it passed by, I think it was a couple dozen votes was the margin. Nice wide margin in the House. So it's going into the Senate with a lot more momentum this time around. I feel like a lot more of the public's tuned into this issue. I think it's going to happen this time around. Interesting little note of drama there. The sponsor of the blue law bill in the House of Representatives is Shannon Roars-Jones.
Good friend of the program. We have her on quite often.
The deciding vote that killed it last time around was her dad, Senator Jim Roars. So
I always give her grief about that. When she started on this, just like, okay, so what's it like at the dinner table? What's it like during holidays now? Your dad go rounds on this thing? I think this time around, Rob, I think we're going to kiss the blue laws goodbye in North Dakota.
I think
Folks,
you're right.
I think they're going to be gone.
I think
These
you're right.
Yeah,
I think the clock's ticking on it.
All right, now let's see what else we got out there. We have the we'll get to the red flag thing. The sports car license plate, that thing 91-1 vote in the House. So what's that got to go over? That's got to wait for crossover.
Yep.
They took my advice and took the ridiculous $110,000 limit off.
Yeah.
There's no limit on it now. It just has to be a two-seater.
Yeah.
So that's gone through. All right. What else?
That makes sense. Although somebody was telling me, I got an email about it from somebody, and they were telling me that they didn't like it because they said, well, listen, I bought a minivan, right? Yeah. Which is obviously not a sports car. But I bought a minivan, and it didn't have. It didn't have a front plate. I had to pay $40 to get a front plate holder. Why should these sports guys? If we're going to do away with the front license plate for sports cars, why not everybody?
Well, because we're a special breed.
You're special. Oh, okay.
No, I'm all for getting rid of them altogether. I said, hey, look, here's what you do. If you don't want to display a front plate in the state of North Dakota, then you get a window sticker that's got that has your plate number on it. It's got some kind of stamp. It's big enough where it can be seen if you're running a school bus arm, and you can't just put it wherever. State's got to say, okay, this is where it must be displayed, either on the left hand side, right hand, lower, wherever, and go down that road with it. I'd have no problem with that either. Okay, time change, time zones. That's not going to happen. That thing's dead.
Well, the politics of it are tough too, and the reason why. And I didn't know this. I should say I learned this when we debated this last legislative session. Did you know that technically most of North Dakota is supposed to be in the Mountain Time Zone?
I think I heard that rumor before.
Like the parallel is supposed to be about 40 miles west of Fargo.
Okay.
Now, obviously, that's not going to work where we have like Fargo and Grand Forks in the Central Time Zone and then the rest of North Dakota in the Mountain Time Zone. Everybody's going to hate that. Just because most of the state, those are our two densest population areas, and we're going to have them on a different time zone than the rest of the state. I think it's manageable because most of the area that's in the Mountain Time Zone in North Dakota is pretty rural. Not really. I think it's about 10% of the state living in the Mountain Time Zone. That's a little bit more manageable than if Fargo was in the Mountain Time, a different time zone. So that would be hard. I do like the idea of going to one full time zone for the whole state. The problem is, the Western North Dakota people, they don't want to let go of Mountain Time Zone, and we're not gonna. It's pretty tough to put Fargo on a different time zone than Moorhead. That's where most of the voters are. So I just don't see the appetite for it out there. No. It's interesting that the people sponsoring that bill, though, are all from Fargo. And granted, the bill puts the whole state on Central Time Zone.
Yeah.
But notably, nobody who actually lives in the Mountain Time Zone is on the bill.
Yeah, they don't want to change it.
Yeah.
That's why. All right, let me take a break and come back. Then we'll hit that's kind of the fun stuff. We got some bigger stuff that they're working on out in Bismarck, and one being this red flag law in regards to your firearms. We'll see where that's at, and then explain a little bit of this cottage food. This thing's back again, right?
Yeah. Well, it passed last session, so what's back now is they want to roll back some of the freedoms that were created by the original bill.
Yeah, that's what All right, we'll get into that, too. If you have any questions for Rob or want to jump in on our conversation, 293-9000, toll-free 1-888-970-9329. Email comes in, get Rob back on 5 days a week. All right, more with Rob Ports, anythingblog.com. Columnist for Forum Communications, and, of course, he has Plain Talk, the podcast, as well. And if you missed our yakking segment, Rob podcast that as well. Anythingblog.com. And also, we podcast. So where are our podcasts at, Kyle? WDAY.com? Is that where they're at? All right, more with Rob before we come back. Jay Thomas Show. 320. Hey, tomorrow on the program, it's Kevin Kramer Day. Every other Tuesday we have him on. He'll join us at 3:05 to take your phone calls. Also tomorrow at about 4:35, I will have Angela Harrington Hill on my program. She is Miss North Dakota International, and she's on talking about some projects that she has going on right now. Rob Port's with us. We have him every Monday, usually at 2:05, but we bumped it today because he had a very important podcast. He was doing a 2:05. Who were you podcasting?
I had an RNC national spokesperson on. We were talking about the shutdown, and obviously, the government's open again, but is it going to shut down again? And the politics around that, and the politics around the State of the Union. Which, by the way, I think President Trump should give the State of the Union from North Dakota. He visits here all the time.
Sure.
This is the epicenter of Trump country. Let's do it. Let's get him here. Yeah. Let's have the State of the Union here.
I'm all for it. Bring him in Fargo, baby.
Senator Kramer actually called for that too. Like
did he really?
He did. I think he was reading the blog because I wrote a post about it. And the whole thing went down, and Pelosi wasn't going to let him and all that stuff. I wrote a post saying, "Come here." Right? The Constitution doesn't say where you got to deliver it. The Constitution's very broad about how he could do it. Come to North Dakota, and then Senator Kramer. I don't know. Maybe he was copying me a little bit. I don't know.
I think he was. I'll ask him tomorrow.
Yeah, ask him. Okay.
When I have him on. All right, this red flag law.
It's a HB 1537.
That's it. Yes. Where's this thing going? And for folks that don't know what it is, this basically, if this were to pass, the law enforcement, if there's concerns, they can, of course, they got to go to a judge and stuff. But you could lose your firearms for, I believe it's 1 year if there's mental health concerns.
Up to a year, yeah.
Up to a year,
and then they can renew it though, because there's a hearing. I think it's I think it's like 30 days before it ends, and then they can re-up if they want to.
Yeah. So if there's somebody feels that this person's suicidal, this person's been saying some really really crazy stuff. Again, law enforcement can't just walk in your house or knock on your door and say, give me your firearms. So they got to go through a judge first.
Well, they can.
To get it.
I mean, they could get a search warrant, and they get their remedy right away. You lose your guns right away.
Yeah, you lose
and then you got to go to court and prove that you're not dangerous.
Oh.
Which I have a problem with. It's HB 1537. Now, it's a House bill. There's a committee hearing scheduled on it for later this week on the 30th. Okay. So what is that? That is Wednesday?
Yeah, it's
Wednesday.
2 days away.
Okay, so Wednesday.
Right. So this thing hasn't been voted on at all, not in the House, nothing yet.
No, not even a committee hearing yet. So they're still very much in the early going. It's going to be interesting to see what happened about it.
This ain't going to pass.
I don't think so, and I don't think it should. And not because I'm against the concept, but here's my problem. I was actually having a little bit of a Twitter back and forth with Representative Carla Rose Hansen, Democrat from Fargo.
Fargo
is the primary sponsor on the bill. We were having a little bit of a very nice Twitter debate about it. She's been very gracious talking to me and everything about it. But we were going back and forth. And one thing that occurred to me during our discussion is this is a civil proceeding. This is not a criminal proceeding. You're not being charged with a crime here. There is no indigent defense, Jay.
Well, what is look, anytime there's a mass, and I say anytime there's a mass shooting because that seems to be really the only time when the topic comes up. When there's a mass shooting in this country, then we go through the whole gun debate, and we know what the issue is. It's mental health issues,
sure.
And it's tough to figure that out. Now, I understand where law enforcement is coming from on this, but here's where my problems lie on this, and I'm just not completely on board with this. And I'll tell you what. Number one, okay. You are now being punished for something you haven't done.
Right.
All right.
You haven't committed a crime.
You haven't committed a crime yet. And here's where I go with it. I'm kind of on board with it because anytime there's one of these mass shootings, you hear. What do you hear from? You hear from the friends or family afterwards. Yeah. Well, we kind of knew. Well, damn it, you could have picked up the phone and done something, but could they have? You know what I'm saying?
Hindsight's 20/20, though.
Here's what I don't like. Here's the other thing I don't like about this. I don't like the fact that somebody can, because the minute somebody's going to call on you and say, hey, look, I got a problem with Rob Port. I don't like some of the stuff he's been saying. Can you check? The minute that happens, your life is tossed into turmoil now.
See, that's
and if somebody's trying to do this just because they're upset with you, okay, and their punishment is a lousy misdemeanor, I don't think so.
So
if you're going to do this to somebody, it should be a damn felony if you're lying and putting somebody's life into this kind of chaos.
Right. The other thing I was going to point out, if you find yourself caught up in this, so I don't know, maybe you're going through a nasty divorce or something, and your spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse or whatever says, oh, he's saying crazy things or whatever. Now you find yourself in this. If there's a civil proceeding against you where you've got to go into court and you got to talk to a judge and you got to say, I'm not dangerous, I'm not crazy, well, there's a couple of things that are true. First of all, nobody's paying for your lawyer.
No,
so you're either going to be there representing yourself or you're paying out of pocket for this lawyer. There is no indigent defense. There is no public defender. This is not a criminal proceeding. This is a civil proceeding. I think that is
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. That's a very good point, Rob Port. People don't realize. You're right. This is civil. This is a civil court matter. So you do not, if you cannot afford an attorney because it's a civil matter, you cannot get a public defender.
So they could come in, they could deny you your Second Amendment rights, and if you want to get them back, you got to pay for a lawyer or, I guess, defend yourself. We all know how that goes. People who defend themselves in court have a fool for a client. Here's another thing that really worries me, though, too. This is so broad. We have done a lot of work in this country removing the stigma from people who seek treatment for mental illness, PTSD for our veterans, saying that this is okay. This doesn't make you a bad person. This doesn't make you a crazy person. Get help. People who have depression, who don't want to go in. If we're aware of the fact that there is a proceeding out there, because I'm telling you, veterans in particular, there's a big overlap between gun owners and veterans. If veterans get the idea that if they seek help for PTSD, but that could somehow come up in a hearing about whether or not they're stable enough to have their guns,
they may not go get the help.
Are we putting a stigma back on some of that stuff? I feel like we are. So Jay, I'm with you. I hear it too, where after the fact, people are saying, well, we should have known, he was acting crazy. You look at some of it, and I agree with you, and I'm not against creating a process like this, but the process that this bill creates does not sufficiently protect our civil rights.
You're right. The protections on this, and I get, because I had both West Fargo Chief Heath Yonke on the program, and I had Chief Todd, both in at the same time, regarding the red flag. And I told them my concerns too. Look, I get where they're coming from. I get that, but to me, it just they got to write this thing better. There's just this thing is just written where somebody decides they're going to abuse this and really try to screw somebody's life. They are going to make that person's life a living hell. And on top of that, the penalty is a misdemeanor. I think it's a Class B misdemeanor.
Well, even there, even there, if you have somebody in there giving their subjective opinions about whether or not somebody is dangerous, how do you get a conviction on that? Right?
Well,
I mean, if you're just saying, well, they're saying some crazy things and I'm worried about them, if they're just making that up, how do you prove that in court? So I think even, you're right, it's a very low penalty for making stuff up, and boy, is that going to be tough to enforce anyway.
Yeah. All right. Rob, all right, so Blaine Talk, the latest podcast, is that up yet? Is it up?
Yeah. Every weekday morning at 4 a.m. the podcast starts going out. We put it up on the blog.
Wow.
I schedule it. I'm not up at 4 a.m. I'm scheduling it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it pops up. So if you subscribe, if you want to listen while you're brushing your teeth or something in the morning, it's there. If you want to listen, that's the great thing about podcasts. You listen when you want to listen. New episodes go up at sayanythingblog.com too if you want to listen that way. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying doing it.
And also, you can check out Rob's work at sayanythingblog.com and at Forum Communication Publications. Rob Port, appreciate it. We'll talk next Monday, brother.
Thanks, Jay.
You got it. 329 News Weather next.